Okay, so David, I've got another question from the forum here, and this is from Resonant, and he asks the question, excuse me, missing release key. App is already in Play Store, but map tiles are not working. I got my Google Maps key for debug, but I didn't get my Google Maps key for release. So is there a way to get the key? If not, I've heard of http:/amap.to. Any more options? Thanks a lot. Now go
So
Northwest.
Resident.
Yeah, let me go on down because
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
our buddy did post a response, but I think you'll want to expound on it. It says, if you haven't already gotten your Google Maps API key for Android version 1 key, it's too late. They've shut down the ability to request those as they have moved on to version 2 now, which Buzztouch doesn't quite yet support, but it's coming very soon. You can create an HTML screen and use the normal Google Maps method to display the map. So, any thoughts on that and what's coming? And
yeah, it's disappointing that he's ended up in this predicament, and Go Northwest is exactly right. We've got to get residents going to have to get a little bit creative based on what's happening. And so, just like the last question, let's back up a little bit and have a short discussion technically about what's happening, and we'll talk about some solutions to fix it. And so, when you compile your app using the Eclipse tool and you crunch all these source code files into one file and create this thing that you upload to the App Store or the Google Play Market, the Google Play Market, the Eclipse tool is doing something called signing it. And you're signing your application, in essence, with your identity as a developer, and you're submitting it to the App Store. So clearly you went through this process successfully. You signed your application, or I should say you, resident, signed the application. I'll assume it's a him for now, but resident, if you're a her, excuse me, I'll just assume you're a guy. So he signed the application and he uploaded it to the App Store, and so he didn't test it enough after he was done signing it, or maybe he did, and because his app looked like it was working, everything was fine, and then he realizes now that it's in the App Store, it's not in what we call debug mode anymore. It's in release mode. This is the device talking now, and you don't see your map tiles. Pretty common. So a few months ago, the solution would have been get the release key, insert it into your project into the right place, recompile, send it up to the Play Store. Everything would have been fine. However, would have required a recompiling. You couldn't have done it just in the store in the live apps, and then the users would have needed to update their apps, because that key becomes part of your application's binary, your compressed and compiled file. It's not something you can change dynamically, say through the control panel or something like that. And so that would have been 3 months ago, and so, or in the past at some point. And so now that you can't do that, and the reason that you can't do that, like Go Northwest has said, is because Android pretty quickly, in my opinion, just decided that their version 1 Android maps aren't going to work anymore. And, well, they still work, but you can't get an API key anymore as a developer to use their Android maps. And so if you hadn't already done that, and you were in this couple of month development phase like thousands of people were, and you didn't realize this, you're a little bit stuck, and that's kind of where you are now. So Resident's a little bit stuck. And so the first solution, which is what I would recommend that Mark talked about, is more of a temporary solution, and it's certainly not a long-term or an ideal solution. And that is, you can, because the content is connected to a control panel, you can, and I'll make the assumption that it is, because your app is connected to a control panel, you can change the type of screen that you have from a map screen to a custom URL screen, and just put in a Google map that'll take you to that location or show what you want. Now, certainly there's going to be some limitations on that. For example, you might have a hard time adding all the pin drops depending on how you're using the map, if it's used to show one location or a bunch of locations, and so don't need to get into the big long discussion there, but you can throw a Google map in a web browser in your app pretty easily to kind of put a patch on what's going on and at least hide those ugly missing tiles. But I think we all understand the limitations of that idea. And so what you're going to want to do is, in essence, recreate your application's binary, recompress this using the newer version 2 Google Maps API key, which is something that we've been working on kind of desperately to support. And the reason, again, I'm not sure if whoever's listening to this video heard the previous question, but the previous question we talked a little bit about our bringing the Android project that we're delivering in downloads kind of more modernized and up to speed. The reason that we don't support version 2, the reason that the map plugin that I wrote years ago doesn't support version 2 maps is because it's designed to run in an activity, not in a fragment. And again, the discussion we had earlier was talking about the differences between an Android activity and an Android fragment. We're trying to move all the plugins toward fragments and away from activities. And in so doing, there's been this big log process. There's lots and lots of them, and we're slowly migrating them, and Maps is one of those. And so even if we were to change the plugin, which I've spent a lot of time on this one plugin, you wouldn't be able to just easily integrate it into your existing project or our existing download because it's a fragment, not an activity. And so it's super frustrating. And so we feel your pain there, resident, I think it was.
Yes.
The good news is, and I'll make some assumptions here, the fact that you've taken ownership of your app and you're super hands-on, you've compiled it and you've put it into the Play Store and it's yours, the good news is you can do all of this. You can do all of this, and it's not that big of a deal. There's lots and lots and lots of people out there, thousands really, who paid someone to make their app or got it from somebody else, and they don't have any access to the project, and they can't make these changes, and it's kind of difficult. And so for you, because you probably learned a little bit along the way and embraced, the Buzztouch approach, and here you are learning something again, you can get through this, and your users will be a little bit disappointed for a while, and you'll be disappointed for a while, and that is kind of the nature of software. There are things that don't go quite as planned, and that's on your end, on our end, on everybody's end. And it sounds like this is one of those cases.
So just as a kind of a side question related to that, you only need one set of API keys, right, to use in any and all of your Android apps, right?
From Google?
Yes. So like if I create an Android app and I get my debug and release API keys, I can use them in my next Android app and my next Android app.
Ah, that's a great question. And the answer is no.
Oh, okay.
You used to be able to.
In the version 1?
You used to be able to in version 1.
Ah,
that's
okay.
Potentially one of their changes. And so what you have now, this is quite fascinating actually, how Google's transitioning into this new way of thinking. What you have now is you have an API, kind of a console page on Google.com, right? You go to whatever it is, apis.google.com, I can't remember what it is, but you go to the Google console page, and there's a long list of Google services that you might want to use. Push notifications through Google Cloud Messaging, Google Maps, Play Store integration with payments. Each one of these services has its own key, and each one of these keys requires the package name for your app. So in my test project that I showed earlier, my package name in this one I think is com.daviddebug. So if yours is com.Coles County Raceway, then that package name belongs to that app, and the next app you make is going to have a different package name, and therefore is going to have a different key. So good question. So the good news is it's easier to make them now. It's much easier to make the keys. It used to be quite a bit more technical. The bad news is you're going to be needing to make them all the time, I think.
Okay.
So, Google's got their finger on it's just one more way. Just one more way. It's amazing how far and wide their reach is. It really is extraordinary. But frankly, you know, if you wanted to make your own Maps software, or you wanted to make your own cloud messaging software, or you wanted to make your own payment software, it'd be quite a bit more difficult than agreeing to their terms and service, you know, whether you agree or not. They give you a lot for your soul, some people say, but
Right.
You know, it's you know,
Well,
it's pretty amazing.
another kind of follow-on question to that. I saw an announcement last week where Google started shutting down some of these services. Some of them like
Yeah,
immediately, and some of them over time.
yeah.
Does any of that shutdown have any effect on the basic Android package from Buzztouch?
Not so far as we know. No. The only thing that's dependent on Google in the existing project that we're downloading right now,
Mm-hmm.
the only thing is Maps. And it actually causes a lot of problems too, and I'll explain why. When most new Android developers create an Android app, they open up Eclipse and they say new Android app, and one of the first things that you do is you choose what platform of version or what version of Android you want to support.
Yes.
And you get a big long list of API libraries, basically. So this is the Froyo, Gingerbread, Eclair, you know, 1.5, 2.3, all these different versions. Now it's up to 4.2 or something like that. So you make that choice the first thing that you do. And so in this long list of choices that you have as a new developer looking through the libraries that you've downloaded as part of the SDK, you have an Android version and a Google version of the same libraries. You have Android 4.0 and Google 4.0. You have Android 2.5 and Google 2. It's crazy.
Sure.
And so the only reason we've been telling people for a couple of years now, you know, choose Google APIs, not the Android APIs, is because it depends on the maps. And if you put a map plugin in your app, we know in advance that you'll need Google APIs to do this.
Okay.
So, again, we're trying to change that. And we're trying to make it much easier to understand and move everyone towards Android 4.0. Done, right? There's a whole other discussion to be had. In fact, this might be a good conversation to schedule again about versioning for Android and what platform should I target. Should I worry about old devices? Should I worry about new devices only, and that kind of thing? And I could talk about that, but the bottom line is we at Buzztouch are always going to be trying to move you, the person making the app, towards the latest thing. That's our responsibility to help you transition from what you have, or if you're just starting what you're making, into the future with the newest and greatest thing. And part of what we're trying to accomplish is when your application is no longer working because Android changes significantly, we love the idea of you being able to easily go to your control panel, re-download your package, recompile it, and resubmit it, because somebody like us and some people like our community has freshened up or modernized the code base to support the new things so that you don't have to. That's a significant part of what we do that kind of goes overlooked sometimes. And I know that it takes time for us to battle through these changes like we're doing right now, where, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks worth of work to bring Android up. We still think it's much easier for you that we are doing that and you don't have to. And so
believe
that's,
it is.
yeah, that's kind of the idea. And maybe one day maybe in our future, you know, maybe we can do a better job of explaining that fact. And we're doing the exact same thing for iOS 7 right now. I know for a fact that there's some things in iOS 7 that are a little bit janky, that need to be changed just to transition through that. And a lot of developers aren't going to know how to do it, and they're not going to want to do it. And again, the control panel, the magic of what we do should make a lot of that easier. And we're getting better and better with each release too. I think Buzztouch started with iOS, I don't even think 3.0 was out. 2.0, I can't remember. From the very beginning, it was crazy. I don't remember the numbers. It's been so long. And with each release of iOS, we've had to do quite a bit of changes and understand what works and doesn't work. And we're trying to do that for people who are making apps and who are interested in making apps, and people who own apps. so that they don't have to. That's the whole idea.